So till now we have completed our conditional statements, which are your if statement, if else, and we have also started the switch statement too. Okay, so we have already covered the switch statement. We know now we have an idea about how to write and what are the syntax that are basically related to your if statement. And always keeps in your mind is that whenever you are using your if statement and whenever you are writing any condition, so that condition should return either your true or false. Okay, so it should return our boolean value. So every time whenever you are going to write any condition, so always keeps in your mind that it should return either true value or false, otherwise you will get an error. Then we have covered these uh, if you want to add some other conditions inside if statement, then in that scenario you can use else if statement also. And if any one of the statement gets true, then in that scenario that particular block gets executed, and and then it will terminate the entire your code. Okay, like this conditional statement. Now let's start with the switch statement, because some of you are having a lot of doubt related to the switch statement. So I will just write a code and I will tell you like how to write a code in your switch statement. So you know that when we have multiple cases, okay, multiple conditional statements, so it is quite advisable to use switch statement. So it's not mandatory that you cannot on those cases you cannot use if or if else cases, but yeah, but it is always advisable to increase your readability. And as I told you that the byte code of your switch statement is more optimized in comparison to your the code of your if else statement code. Okay, so whenever you are going to use your switch statement, so how you are going to write it? So first of all, you know that we have to create a class. So now you have an idea about that. First of all, we are creating a class, and in that inside that class, it is mandatory that we generally use these your curly braces. So these curly braces are representing the body or scope. Okay. So after this, we cannot have an access of this class ABC. So the scope of class ABC is limited inside these two curly braces. Then we generally write public static void main, and inside that we generally write your string args. So we already have an idea why we are writing public static void main. Okay, so our JVM will always look for our public static void main method. Why it always looks for? Because it has to start the program from one point. Okay, so where that one point is located, here inside our public static void main. So our JVM will always looks for this public static void main method. So if this method is not available, so if it is not available, then in that scenario, what will happen? It directly throw us an error, runtime error, that the public void main method is not available, okay, or not present in our program. Now here in this case, because we want to apply multiple cases over there, so what using switch statement. So let's assume I have used variables int num. So you know that this is a data type and this is my variable name. Okay, so you know that how to select your variable name too, because there are certain rules related to your variable names also. Okay, now I just want to assign num is equals to 10. So as I told you earlier, that this is a variable. Okay, this is not a constant value. Why it is not a constant value? Because later after this program, I can again change the value num is equals to 20. Okay, so it means I can keep update the value of this my variable num. So that is why this is not a constant value. Because we have also gone through the concept of constant value too. So that is why I just want to tell you about that this num is not having the constant value, means you can change that particular value. Num is equals to 11, 12 after this program, means after this line of code, I can change this value. So there is no restriction that I cannot change this value like that. Okay. Now after that, if I want to use any switch statement, so you know that the syntax is this. So all in your lowercase, and over there you can use any expression. Okay, any expression with respect to, even I can write num plus 1 2. So I can write any expression over there. Okay, but the expression which I am basically passing it inside my switch statement, it should be of your some specific data type. Okay, so in the last class we have discussed that our switch statement will consider how many data types. It consider your byte data type, it consider your short data type, it consider your int data type, it consider your char data type. Okay, so which these are the only data, or and our string data type. So these are the only specific data types which our switch case or switch statement will consider. Okay. Other than that, if you are going to use your long data type, your float as well as double, so it will not consider. And you know the reason why it is, why we are not considering your long, because the range is very large, and in most of the scenario we have seen that the cases which we are going to consider, if we are taking the range of integer, it will consider most of the cases. That's why they are not basically considering long as a data type for our switch statement. Similarly for your float as well as your double, because again always remember that using float and double we can represent your infinity number. Okay, if I'm going to ask you about system.out.println, this is a different program. Okay, and in this program if I'm going to write like 1 divided by 0, okay, so the output will be an error. I will get an error if I'm going to write it like this. Why? Because you know that if I'm going to perform 1 divided by 0, so in reality it is a your infinity number. Okay, so whenever we are going to divide a number with any number, like with your 0, so always we will get your error, means we will get an infinity. And here you already know that it will return me which data type number, your integer data type number. Why? Because my LHS is integer, my RHS is also RHS, or operand is also integer, and whenever we are using operators, so we will always consider it as what your integer. So that is why we always get runtime exception, because this number 1 divided by 0 is not going to be, means we cannot represent an infinity number using our integer number. But if I am going to write it down like this, 1.0 divided by 0, okay, so what I want to say is that if I am going to write 1.0 divided by 0, and if I am going to execute this program, so the output which I will get over there is INF. INF represent your infinity. Okay. So what does it mean? It means that if you want to represent infinity number, so infinity numbers can be represented either using your double or your float. Other than that, if you are going to use even long two, so in that scenario also you cannot represent an infinity number. So infinity numbers can only be your represented by using float or double in your Java programming language. So this is a very important concept. So always keep in your mind. Okay. So if you want to, if you are going to write it down 1.0 divided by 0, so you will get the output infinity. But if I am going to divide 1 divided by 0, then in that scenario, I will get a runtime error. Basically, it is a runtime exception that this number cannot be represented using your integer value. Okay, using our integer data type. Now, after this, you already know that we are using switch statement. So in switch statement, we can use these certain specific data type. And whenever you are using switch statement, so these curly braces are mandatory. Okay. So if I'm not going to use curly braces, then what will happen? I will get an error. Okay, so it is mandatory that whenever you are using or creating any using any switch statement, so the first thing what you need to do is to use after this use curly braces. Then inside these this your case statement, if I am going to write okay system dot out dot your println, I'm just writing it down like this and hello. If I'm going to execute this program, okay, if I'm going to execute this program, then what will happen? I will get an error. Why I will get an error? Because whenever you are using switch statement, okay, so till now everything is fine. Compiler will compile this code and this is still this statement everything is fine. Now we have used curly braces, that is okay. But in your inside your switch statement without case you cannot execute any statement. Okay, so that is why whenever you are using any switch statement, so you either you use default case or you can use this case. So this is a keyword which you need to use. Okay, so after that you can use any number over there. So I have used this and you have to use semicolon. So right now, if I'm going to execute this code, then what will happen? So the output which I will get over there is nothing. Why? Because here the num is equals to 10. The switch statement I will get num plus 1 is 11. So now my switch statement is basically looking for case number 11. And as you can see it over there, here I don't have anything as case 11. Okay, so that is why it terminate our, and we don't have any default case 2 right now, because default default case is basically it's not mandatory. Okay, so we don't have default case, so that's why what will happen, it is going to terminate our program. Okay, and we will not get any output, but our entire program will executed successfully. Now let's take one more scenario, because there is a one more concept in your switch statement is your fall through concept. Okay, so let's assume we have a switch statement, and inside the switch statement, what we have case 0, and I'm just writing it like that system.out.print, and I'm just printing the value 0 over here. I have written case 1, and inside case I have written system.out.println and I'm just printing. So even in the inside your switch statement, we can use break statement, break your keyword too. Okay, so you already know the meaning of break. If we are going to use break, then what will happen? It will entirely it will terminate our program. Okay, so after this thing, means it terminate our switch statement, not entire program, but terminate our switch statement. Then we have case 2, and then I'm printing system.out.println is the value 2 over there, and then I'm using default. So this is how you are going to write your program. Okay, so I have used a default case 2 over here, and over there I just want to print a def on anything I can print over there. Okay, so I have created a switch statement over there. Okay, let's assume this int is, or this x is a integer data type variable. Okay, now in this integer data type variable, let's take in input, if we are passing x is equals to 0, so what output we are getting. Okay, so let's assume if we are going to assign x equals to 0, then what will happen? So it will go over there and it will look for case number 0. So you already know that this is my case number 0. Okay, so it will execute this statement and I will print 0 over there. But here in this case statement, you can see one thing, and you can notice, you have noticed one thing is that inside my case 0, I don't have return break statement. So automatically, like in the last lecture, I told you, automatically whatever the cases that are below, okay, that are below, and after this is case, all those cases gets executed. That is why what will happen, it will execute my case 1 2, and in the inside my case, even though it is not satisfying this case 1 condition, okay, so don't get confused, because some of the students get confused that okay, here we have passed a 0, so why we are executing case 1? Because once one of the case gets executed, then what will happen automatically, whatever the cases that are after this case, if we haven't written break statement, okay, always keep in your mind, then what will happen, we will execute this statement, and we will get the output 1 2 over here, okay. But after case 1, you can see in the case 1 we have written break statement. So that is why what will happen, it will terminate our switch statement. So that is why if we are going to write x equals to 0 over there, so the output which we will get over there is only 0 1, okay, like this. Now let's take, if we have written this one, if we x is equals to 1, if we are going to assign x is equals to 1, then what output we will get? So again, my case 1 is not satisfying the condition, so that is why it will directly go to my case 1, and here it is satisfying my condition. So that is why what will happen here, the output which I will get first over there is 1. But after this, you already know that we have written break statement. That is why it will entirely terminate our switch statement. So that is why if our input is 1, then output we will get over 1 2. Okay. Now let's take x is equals to 2. So now my x is equals to 2 over here. So in that scenario, what will happen? It is not so case 0 is not satisfying. Okay, so it will always go from top to bottom. Okay, so case 2 is not satisfying, case 1 is not satisfying, then it will go to case 2. Yes, case 2, this case 2 is satisfying. Okay, so that is why what will happen, it will directly execute and print 2 over here. But here again, you can see it over there, we haven't written break statement here. So that is why it will automatically execute the next statement, and that next statement is what our DEF. Okay, so that is why we will get the output DEF over here. Now, after that, if we are going to pass the value x is equals to 4, okay, so now you can see it over there that even we don't have any case which is representing case 4. Okay, so we have only case 0, case 1, case 2. So that is why if we are going to use 4, or if we are going to write 10, or if we are going to use 15 over there, then automatically what will happen, it will execute our default case. So for 15, let's assume it will directly execute our default case, and that will be our DEF. Now, even in default case, you can see it over there, we don't have break statement. But after this statement, you can see it over there, we don't have any other cases. Okay, we don't have any other cases. So that is why we will get only one output, and that output we will get it over there is what, your DEF. Okay, so this is known as your fall through. Okay, fall through in your switch statement. So this is the basic concept of your switch statement, that when what the way you have written your case statement, it will always go through from top to bottom. So if you haven't written break statement, so it will execute, or it will basically print the next statement. Okay, next case statement. Okay, like this. So from this example, I think you have understood about the entire thing about that, how our switch statement gets executed.
So,
One more. Yes, any question?
yes, sir. Sir, when you use the first one, like x is equal to 0,
Yes.
sir, then you didn't use the break statement after it. Sir,
Yeah.
then why it is only printing 0? It should print 1, 2 now.
So I have written a 0 and 1 over there.
Okay. Okay,
This
sir.
is the output of your first. This is the output which we are getting for second case. This is the output we are getting for when x is equals to 2. And this is the output of your x is equals to 15. Got it?
Yes, sir.
Uh-huh. So this is the first case. See, in the first case, you are getting the output 0 and 1. Why you are not getting 2? Because in 1, you have break statement. So that is why you are not getting you are not going to execute this statement. Okay, like this. And for 1, you know, for 2, you will get 2 and DEF, because again in 2 you don't have break statement, so automatically it will execute whatever the statement, whatever the case after this your case 2. So we have default case, so that is why we are getting 2 and DEF. And in the last case, we don't have any other statement, even though we haven't written break statement. So that is our last case. So that is why after that, what will happen? It will only execute your DEF. Okay. So in this, yes.
Sir, what about if we put the default statement at the top of the all the cases?
Yeah. So I'm also going through. So see, in the last class also I have shown you that default for default you can basically change the location. Okay, you can change the location of default to. It's not like that you can every time you can write your default case at last. You can use default case earlier or in before your case 1 or case 02. Okay, so in that scenario, how your compiler will execute is that, see, in that scenario there are the two approaches you have to understand. Okay, like you can think about your compile time and your runtime approach, so that you will understand this thing. So how our compiler will execute this code is that for the first case, see, for the first case, the output which we will get it from this example is what? Your 01. I hope you understand, because it is satisfying case 0 over there. So first of all, whenever we are going to use default case, so default case will be executed at last. Okay. First of all, it will check for your case 0, case 1, case 2, all these cases it will check. So that is why for 0, it will execute 0 and 1. You already know. Then for case 1, it will execute 1. Now for case 2, it will give us the output 2 only. Now the question that comes into your mind is why we haven't written why it is not executing DEF statement, because the way we have written write it down this entire this code, our source code, you can see it over there that this default statement is ahead of your case statement 2. So the statement which are after this your case to statement are going to be executed. Okay, so that is why we will only get the output 2 over there. Now once we are going to write case is equals to 15, so you can see it over there, it is not satisfying all these cases. So which case it is satisfying? Only our default case. So for default case, what will happen? It will execute DEF. Then after this DEF, because we haven't used break statement in our DEF, in our default in your case, so that is why whatever the statements that are after, okay, that are after this statement, all those statements gets executed. So that is why we will get 0 over there, and then we will get 1 over there. Then only this 0 and 1 we will get. Why? Because again, in 1 we have break statement. That's why for 15, if we are going to write it down like that, so it will execute DEF 0 and 1. Okay. I hope you got your point, that how
Sir,
how basically our compiler or JVM is executing our code. Yes. Anyone
sir, can we
having any
use,
doubt? You can directly ask me. Okay.
sir, can we use one case to call another case? Let's say if I use in case 2 to call like case 0.
Okay. So you are you want like this. So you want to say like this.
Yes, sir, any case, like if I want call like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
applied case 2 and called case 0. Can we
No,
do that?
actually, it is not in. It is not there in your this. You cannot call the cases, but how can you call it? Like, see, the way I have right now, the way I have written my these cases. Okay, so what will happen? Even though if you see now in my case 0, I don't have any statement. Okay, for case I am having 1. So even though if you are going, if I will get 0 case or 1, if for 0 or 1, I will get for input value 0 and 1, I will get the same output. Got it? Because for case 0, it will again print the value 1. For case 1, again it will print the value 1. So you are basically solving that problem. So it's because you didn't basically, you cannot call those cases. But if you want that, basically if you want to use or if you want that, okay, for case 0 it will also print that value, or for case 1 it will also print that value. So this is how basically you can use these cases. Okay. For
Okay.
case 0, again it will give me the output 1 over there. See, because I don't have any statement or break statement 2, so automatically it will execute my this thing. So if you want, like for some scenarios, that for all the scenarios it will give me some same output, so you can write it like that: case 2, okay, case 3, case 4, and over there I can write system.out.println, for example, hello. Now if I'm going to execute, if I will take input value as 0, 1, 2, 3 and 4, in all those cases, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, in all the cases we will get what your this same output, that is what your hello. Okay, so the same output you will get, because in these statement you don't have anything. Okay, you are not executing any statement for these statement, but you already know that we are using a concept known as your fall through. So this concept is known as fall through, that if you haven't written any break statement, so whatever the statement that are after those case statements, so they are going to be executed automatically. Okay, if you haven't written any break statement. Now, so this is all about your switch statement. Yes.
So, but is this useful? That
Yeah, it
last
is
one.
useful. Yeah. These cases are also useful. How it is useful, like I can tell you about in the case of your banking statement. Okay. So for example, if you want to, like, if your case is in your January, okay, for January, so suppose January is representing 0, Feb is basically representing 1, 2, 3, 4. So these are your months. Okay. And for all these months, suppose you want that you should apply uh, this your interest, simple interest, as your, or you can call it as your interest as 5.7%. Okay, like this for all these cases, even though if you are getting 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that is why in all the cases you are going to get what the same rate of interest. So how you are going to represent this thing, these cases, in your using your switch statement? So this is a very simple way you can represent it. Got the point?
Yes, I got it.
Okay. So using, I'm not saying that that if you want you can use if statement also for these such kind of cases, but yeah, for switch statement, if you want to represent, see, it's quite easy, and a user can easily understand. Okay, for January, Feb, March, April, and June, because you know, now you know that the concept of your switch statement, so you can know, okay, you can understand, okay, for all these your months, you will get the same interest rate, okay, like 5.7% or whatever the same your interest rate you will get. So that is why it is very useful. Now, so till now we have gone through and covered our entire your switch statement, and one more concept which I am again going to revise because again some student gets confused related over there is, oh, in your case you can use either your constant values or your literals. Okay, so always remember, okay, other than that, if you are going to use, you will get an error. Like I cannot use X over there. Why I cannot use X over there? Because X is a variable. Okay, X is a variable, and this variable is not a constant variable. So that is why we always use final keyword. Always remember, because this keyword we are going to use, we are going to apply in some other concept too. So that is why I have told you that this concept, this your keyword, final keyword, what it will do, it will make your variable what your constant. What does it mean? If I am going to write final X is equals to 5, okay, sorry, final int X is equals to 5. So now I have made this variable constant. What does it mean is that later, after some time, if I am going to update the value of x is equals to 6, okay, I am updating the value of x is equals to 6, so I will get an error. Why I will get an error? Because we have already defined that this variable value is constant. So why you are basically changing the value of x? So that is why we will get an error. So that is why we are not getting any error if we are using constant variable, okay, like your final variable. But if this variable is not constant, so later on, if I am going to update the value x is equals to 6, so it will execute. I will not get any output. Why? Because you can change. This is not a constant value. So this is the difference between if you are using final or if you are not using final data type. Okay. So if you are using final, then only you can use this the variable name over there. Otherwise, you will get an error, and you can use literals like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, anything like that. And the third thing, which is very important, is that you cannot use duplicate values. In the last lecture, one question has been asked: can we write case 1 and case 1 two times? No, you will get an error, and the error you will get over there is duplicate values. Okay, and even I have shown you, like, you will get this error. And one more thing which is important related to your in case is that your data type. Okay, data type range. Even I have shown you in the last class is that if you have used byte data type, okay, byte data type, and for byte data type, you know what is the range of a byte data type. So the range of byte data type is -128 to 127. Now, if in any one of the case, if I'm going to write it down 400, case 400. So now all my cases are basically basically considering only byte values. But here I have written case 400. So it is not possible. This 400 we cannot represent in your byte data type value. Okay. So that is why it will directly throw an error. Okay. So that is why whatever the data type you are using it in your switch statement, you have to follow that particular range. If you are not following that range, then what will happen? You will get an error. Okay, so if I'm going to write case 400 for this particular case, so I will get an error. Again, that error will be like integer to your byte conversion, lossy conversion error. Okay, like this. Now, I hope, yeah.
So, if we are using final function, so can we use it in input function? So, if we are using it in input, then we are already defining it. So, can we use it in input function or not, sir?
Which you are saying here?
No, sir. If we are using final.
Okay.
So here we are using final. So we are already defining x. So we cannot change it later.
Yeah, we cannot change it later. Yeah.
So can we use it in input function? Because if we are not using final function, then we are taking input. So basically, from outside we are taking input. So can we use it in input function or not, sir?
Okay, you are asking me like during runtime, can we use like if you are taking some values during runtime, so can we assign during runtime, can we take this that particular variable as final data type? This is what you are saying?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so actually what happens, see, again, that concept I will tell you later on, because that concept is related to your local variable and your global variables. Okay. But right now, I'm just going to tell you about, no, you cannot do it. Okay, you have to assign some value. Some value you have to assign it whenever you are basically declaring and defining it. Because see, the purpose over there is you already know that this value you can use it. But I will tell you about this concept later on. I have pointed down your question. So same concept I will tell you whenever we are going to discuss about static variables. So there is a similar to your final, we generally use, like in public static void, when we have used static. So static generally used for your global variables. So how we are going to use it for your global variable, local variables, at that time I will tell you like what are the cases when we are going to consider it during your runtime, when we are not going to consider it during runtime like that. Okay, so I will tell you about that thing because it is all about related to your default value. Okay, so if we have default values, then it might create an error. But if it is not having any default value, then yes, you can go for it. Okay, so I will tell you about that part also.
Okay.
Okay, so now we have covered the entire concept related to your switch statement. After this, now in our now we are going to start a new topic. Okay, just what you can do after this or during evening, just go through all these cases. Okay, just write it down. What are the cases we can take? Just check it out. Okay, can what are the output we are getting it? All these things you can directly test it out. Okay, now. Now we are going to start our new concept that are basically your loops. So you already have an idea about what are loops in Python or 2 also. You have used loops. Okay. So why we are using loops? So first question that comes into your mind, like when you have used for the first time, that why we are using loops over there. So the answer why we are using your loops is basically suppose I want to execute a statement. Suppose I have a statement system.out.println. For a simple case, I'm telling you, I want to print this your hello statement 1,000 times. I want to print, I want to display this message 100,000 times. So how can I do this? How can I perform this operation? So if we don't have an idea about loops, so what we generally do, we are going to write the system.out.println 1,000 times. Okay, so we have to write it down 1,000 times. So you know that the readability of our code becomes so complex, everything will become so complex, and even it will take a lot of time to execute, like you are executing one by one, and our compiler will take all the statement as a new statement because it has no idea, okay, you are executing the same statement multiple times. So it will consider it, okay, you are executing the same different statement, although you will see that you are getting the same output. Okay, so it is going to increase our readability, and you already, as I have mentioned earlier and many times, that whenever we are dealing with your high level programming language, our main idea behind that is that we want to make our entire code more readable. That is why we also used comments. Okay, so I will recommend you that whenever you are writing your program, okay, so always make a practice of that, that whenever you are using writing anything, always try to use comments, so that if any one of your friend, or if in your if in future, if you are going to use as if you want to see your code, so that after just after this your description, whatever the description you have written in your comment, you will be able to understand, okay, this variable I have used for this thing, this purpose, this is my code, this is my logic, all these things. Okay, so it is always advisable to go for these your commit. So I think most of you have gone through have an account on your GitHub. So over there you have seen that, and you have even downloaded the codes, source code from GitHub too. So over there you have seen that, okay, how they have written the codes. Okay, so over there you have seen that they have already always they generally try to use comments, so that even if you are seeing their code, you will be able to understand, okay, what are their logic, why they are using these variables, what is the objective of this variable like that. Okay, now, so loops are basically executed a set of lines or statement as long as a specified condition is satisfied. You already know it mainly saves our time. So even though if you are writing your code, you don't need to write it down 1,000 times. Okay, so that is why it mainly saves our time. So there are mainly two types of loops. First one is your definite loop. So a loop that executes a finite number of times, like if I'm going to tell you about 0 to 100. So these loops are known as your definite loops, and indefinite loops like a loop where it is difficult to determine in advance that how many times it will be executed. Like initially, if we have assigned like 0 to 100, it will execute. So you know that 100 times it will execute. But sometimes if you have used some complex logic, and based on that complex logic, if you are going to execute that particular loop, so you have no idea that how many times our loops gets executed. So that are basically known as your indefinite loop. Now, first loop which we are going to cover in this lecture is your while loop. So all of you have already have an idea about while loop. What is a while loop in your Java programming language? So in Java, while loop is used to iterate a part of the program several times. Here in your while loop, the condition is evaluated first. Okay, so you already have an idea that first you are going to evaluate the condition. So right now you can say, see, over there in if statement we have written down if, then we check for condition, then we have written your statement, whatever the statement we have written. Here what we have used while, but this while will go for what your, it will basically iteratively it will go for multiple time. It will execute multiple time till then whenever it is basically satisfying our condition. So if it is returned true, the statement or lines inside the while loops are executed. If we don't know the number of iterations in advance, then the best suitable loop is while loop. Okay, so if you don't have any idea that how many times we are going to iterate basically the particular statement, so it is advisable. I'm not saying that okay, it is better than for loop or it is better than do while loop like that. So, but it is recommended. Okay, so always go for your while loop. So if you don't have any idea about that, how many for till how many iterations we are going to execute our loop now. So this is the flow chart of your loop while loop. So over there again in your for loop while loop also, if I'm going to write it down one over there, okay, while one, so I will get an error. Okay, again I'm telling you why, because every time in Java whenever you will see condition, okay, so it will always return Boolean value. So if it is not returning Boolean value, then we will get an error. So that is why if your condition is true, then it will basically execute those statement, whatever the statement that are there inside the block of our while statement. Other than that, if it is false, then it will directly terminate our entire while block. Okay. So for termination, we generally use your whatever false statement if it is false. Now here in this case, you can see it over there. As I told you that the argument to the while loop should be of your Boolean type. If we are using any other type, we will get compile time error. So here in this example, I have just write it down one over there. So one is what? One is a integer number. Okay. So but our while is basically looking for either true value or your false value. So true value it is looking for. So if we are going to execute this code, then what will happen? We will get an error over here. And the error which we'll get over here is C. Incompatible types, int cannot be converted to Boolean. Okay, so in Java, you cannot convert int integer to Boolean. So in type conversion, you can also try and test it out that you cannot convert your integer data type into your Boolean data type. Okay, so that is why you will get an error over there. So always whenever you are using while statement, so always keep in your mind is that that particular condition either should return me a true value or a false value. Now second thing is about similar to our if condition. Okay, because in switch case, always remember in switch case, because sometimes it might be possible you might get confused. In switch case, your curly braces are mandatory. Okay, if I'm not going to use these two curly braces, so I will get an error. But in similar to your if statement, in your while statement, your curly braces are optional, and without curly braces, we can take only one statement, which should not be declarative statement, similar to your if statement. Okay, So in if statement also, if we are not going to use curly braces, then it will execute only one statement. Here also it will also execute your one statement, but always keep in your mind is that that particular curly braces statement, okay, if we are not using curly braces, and that particular statement should not be a declarative statement. So here I have uh, basically write down four examples. Okay. So in the first example, you can see over there, I have just written while true. So every time the condition will be true. Okay. And then I have just executed the print this statement hello world. So I haven't used any curly braces over there. So it will take only this your statement system.out.println this statement. Now in the second case, I haven't used any other statement. I have just used while, and after this I have used this your semicolon. So this semicolon is again like no statement while loop. Okay, and it is valid in Java. Always remember it is valid in Java. Similar to your if statement and your switch statement too. In switch, if I am going to write it down like this, okay, semicolon, whatever the variable, or here I am basically passing the condition. So these are known as your no statement, your if statement of your if statement, and no condition or your no statement of your switch. Okay. Similarly, here in the case of your while loop, if you want that you don't want to execute, even though you are not going to use it, okay, I must say that you are not going to apply this thing, but always keep in your mind that this concept, if an exam, if will give you that whether it is valid or invalid in Java, so you will say that yes, it is valid in Java, and this is basically known as no statement while, okay, while loop, like that. So in the first case, the output which you will get over there is hello world, hello world, hello world. Infinite times you will get what? Hello world. Why? Because you are executing one statement and the loop is always satisfying my condition. So if my loop is always satisfying my condition, so it will always execute only one statement. So it will consider only one statement. That's why the output which we will get over there is hello world, mud infinite times. In the second one, I will not get any output. In the third case, what we have used, we haven't used these curly braces, okay? But we have declared a variable. So as I told you that if we are not using curly braces, even in the case of if statement, and if we are declaring some values, then what will happen? We will get an error. Always keep in your mind. Okay, but if we are using curly braces, then we can declare a variable inside while. Okay, so if we will see it over there, what are the valid statement or invalid statement related to while loop? So first is valid, second one is valid, fourth one is valid, but third one is invalid. Why it is invalid? Because we haven't used these curly braces, and but we have declared. Okay, so declaration is not allowed whenever we are not using these curly braces. Okay, and I have told you about the reason also. I have explained about the reason that the scope of the variable will be only with related to this line only, and it is not at all required, it is not at all appropriate. Okay, so that is why they have made this thing that it is invalid in Java. Okay, because you cannot use this variable later on, because this is a single line. Okay, if you are not using it, so if you cannot use this variable later on, then what is the need of writing or declaring a variable? Okay, like this. Similarly, you can, if we have these two conditions, okay, these two are very important concept too, okay, related to your while loop. So now, if we have these two source code, so you can see it over there. What condition I have write it down over there? While true means this condition is true. So every time it will give me the true condition. So you know that according to us, if we are going to execute this code, so the output which we will get over there is what? Hello world, hello world, hello world infinite times. And after that infinite times, it will give me what? Your high word. According to us, okay? If we are going to execute it according to our concept. But in your Java programming language, if you are going to execute these such kind of program or these such kind of program where your entire condition, your loop will be executed in finite times, and after that, after this loop you want to execute some statement, okay, then what will happen, it will always give us an error, and the error which we will get over there is unreachable statement. Always remember, okay, this concept is again very important, because right now I have just told you about true. What if whatever the case you are taking it and every time you are getting the true condition, okay, so in that scenario later on if we have written some statement over there, so we will get a compile time error, and the error which we will get over there is unreachable statement. So you already know that we never ever able to execute this statement. Why? Because this loop will execute in finite times, because this condition will always be true, and this loop will be executed what your infinite time. Okay, so that is why we will get an error. Okay, and the error which we will get it over there is unreachable statement. Similarly, in the second case, what I have done, I have write it down like false statement directly. Okay, while false. Okay, so again you already know about this case too, is that it is again not able to execute this statement. This statement will never be executed. Okay, so that is why again you will get an error over there, is what your unreachable statement. Why it is showing me an error over there, why it is not showing me an error over here? Because according to our compiler, it will never execute this statement, because after this it is going to execute this thing. Okay, this syntax basically it will read, so it will never read this syntax after my, because you already know that once we have written down false, so we cannot turn it into true over here. Okay, because we haven't used any variable. If we have used some variable, then it's okay. Later on it might be possible we can change or change the value of that particular variable, but here we are not using variable, we are just directly saying that okay, here it is a false, while false, so it will always return give me false cases, so it will never execute this statement. So that is why our Java compiler is very intelligent. Okay, because because our Java compiler already understand about these concepts, that okay, if we are not able to execute this statement, why to basically write this code? It is not at all required, or it is not at all advisable. So that is why it will say that okay, unreachable statement, it will throw an error. If you don't want to execute, just don't write these statements. Our Java compiler will say, okay, it will say directly, say don't, no need to write these line of code if we are getting any if you don't want to execute. Okay, so like this. So that is why our Java compiler is very intelligent. It will always say that unreachable statement here also. Similarly, here also our Java compiler will say, okay, it will never execute this statement. Then why are you writing this statement? Because you already know that every time it will give me or return me a true value. Okay, like this. So again, I will get an unreachable statement. So always keep in your mind is that whenever you are or in exam, if it will give you some question, and over there somehow, if I'm going to write while 5 is greater than 3, okay, so every time you know that I haven't used any variable. Okay, always keep in your mind I have used constant literals. Okay, and I have written 5 is greater than 3, so you already know that every time it will return me true value. Okay, so that is why, and I cannot change these values, 5 is greater than 3, inside my this body of my while loop. So that is why every time, so it is a kind of this condition. Okay, so that is why again it will give me what your error of unreachable state.
Sir,
Okay,
sir, in the previous example, if instead of true, if you use any condition and which is always true in that sense, then also it will throw error.
sorry.
Sir, instead of true, if you use particular condition, any condition,
Okay,
and that is true, then also it will throw error.
no, it will throw an error only if that condition is like always it will be true. You cannot make it false. Like I have shown you 5 is greater than 3. Okay, so you already know that every time I cannot change this statement also. Okay, this condition, and it will always return me 5 is greater than 3. Okay, So this condition will always return me true. So that is why I will get an error, because it will be a infinite loop. But let's assume if I have used a variable int x is equals to 5 and int y is equals to 3 over there. Okay. Now if I am going to write it down like x is greater than y, then what will happen? It will not throw us an error. Why it will not throw us an error? Because according to our Java compiler, because it might be possible that we have written some code over there, because we can modify the value of x is equals to 5 later on too. Okay, because we can change or update the value of x and y, because these are not your constant values. So that is why what will happen? It will not throw us an error, but it will throw us an error only when every time whatever the statement or condition you have written over here, it will only and you cannot basically update that condition. Okay, that is the only case you will get this error. Otherwise you will not get it.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so for this the question which you have asked, for this this is the last slide, and after this I am going to end my today's session. Okay, so the question which he has asked, for that I have quoted two examples. So see, what I have done, I have used two variables, num1 is equals to 10 and num2 is equals to 20. So you know that 10 is less than 20. So every time this condition is true according to you. Okay, but if I'm going to execute this code, okay, but if I'm going to execute this code, so it will give me an infinite times hello world. So it will not throw me any error. Okay, why it will not throw me an error? So the reason behind this is that these values, according to our compiler, a programmer, it might be possible that after some times I have used some logic inside this your block, and it might be possible I might update num1 is equals to 30 and num2 is equals to 20. I might update the value over there. So that is why it will not throw any error over there. Okay. Similarly, in the second case, what I have made these variables as what your final. It means now these values are constant. I cannot modify the value of num1 as well as num2. Okay, so if I'm going to execute this value, so every time you already know that 10 will always remain less than 20. Okay, I cannot modify this value too. So that is why I will again get an error, and the error which I will get it over there is what your unreachable state. Okay, so this is all about your while loop. So in the next class, we are going to discuss about different loops like your do while as well as for loop. Okay, so this is all about our today's class. And if you are having any doubt, you can just go through it and you can ask me in my next lecture. Okay.